talk about your number one guy, pick 100 to 150. You're liking Romeo Doubs, right?
Yeah, I did want to just shout out a quick few guys that are going much higher on underdog drafts than they are according to the Fantasy Pros ADP. And based on the Yahoo draft that did last night, these guys are also falling quite far as well. Going beyond pick 100, Elijah Moore, 112, Cortland Sutton, 113. I won't say the next one because I know that's one of Mike's guys, but then also Sky Moore going pick 132. All those guys are above Romeo Doubs for me, and they're going around pick 80 to 90 right now on these underdog drafts, which is more of the sharper drafters. Just something to definitely note as the number one pass catcher potentially. Elijah Moore has been dominant all training camp. Cortland Sutton has apparently been the Mike Williams big X role for Sean Payton and regained his 2019 form where he had over 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. They're saying he's looking like a stud so far and getting the most targets in camp. I'll believe Russell Wilson will matter when I see it, but at that price tag, instead of the round 4 guy he was last year, round 3 even, I think Cortland Sutton is a nice rebound potential candidate. And then Sky Moore playing all number 1 receiver sets with 1-2 receivers, him and Justin Watson playing with Pat Mahomes. Everybody talking about how much of a huge step Moore has taken in training camp, looking like that next big thing with Kadarius Toney out. So Sky Moore, definitely one of those guys. So those 3 guys wanted to make sure to highlight. I can't believe they're going after pick 100, but definitely write them down on your little cheat sheet. But a guy I know will be going after pick 100. He's going 132 overall right now, wide receiver 54 on Fantasy Pros, wide receiver 52 at 114 on Underdog. That's Romeo Doubs. I am absolutely in love with him. The Packers vacated the second most air yards and targets at 2,575 air yards, 258 targets. That's third in air yard percentage at 59%, and target percentage 47% as well. So tons of open opportunity for grabs with Lazard, Cobb, all those other old crusty guys out. Who's going to be the number one? Well, most people clearly assume it's Christian Watson, 4th, 5th round price tag. That's the guy I definitely, if it's one or the other, would have straight up Christian Watson. But at the prices, it really could still be Doubs. He is the guy that really has great chemistry with Jordan Love. All last preseason was the darling of camp, Romeo Doubs, and who was doing that work with? Jordan Love with the second stringers. Already this preseason, now that Love has taken over, it seems like that pre-established rapport narrative that you often hear, and honestly often does ring true, is happening here. 4 targets, 4 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown so far, and about a half of action for Romeo Doubs. The coach saying, this is a 1A, 1B situation. We don't have a true 1. So I'm just kind of following the tea leaves and what they're saying. The coach even saying that Romeo Doubs' routes remind me of Devontae Adams and how violently he runs them. The beat writers often reporting that Doubs is the most targeted guy each and every practice. So yes, I like Watson and the fact that he scored the 4th most touchdowns on the 67th most targets. A very explosive guy, definitely going to have some humongous weeks. But Doubs might end up being the most steady guy at well under half the cost, going again, pick 130 right now. I really, really like him. Plus, he's no Aaron Rodgers, Wolf. He's going away from an MVP. I actually think that could benefit him. 1, that pre-established rapport, as we mentioned. But 2, we often saw Aaron Rodgers freeze out these rookies when they made the wrong route and get Randall Cobb in. We need to have this old guy that I have trust with. And then you'd see Doubs disappear for a 4 or 5 week span. That's not going to be the issue here. And Jordan Love also does look great too. 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, and about a half of preseason action. Calm, cool, taking shots, hitting tight windows. He looks like the real deal. So I do not see this as a downgrade at all from going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. In fact, that could end up benefiting a guy like Romeo Doubs, a guy like Christian Watson as well. So I love Doubs at this price tag, taking stabs all day.
Speaking of taking stabs, MOH is gone again. But speaking of taking stabs, you want to talk OBJ? I mean, I don't even know, man. It's just one of those guys that I'm always willing to go back to. Odell Beckham. I think this offense for the Ravens is going to be extremely explosive under Todd Monken, bringing the air raid attack, and it's wide open at the top. Who's going to lead the way? And I know Mike's going to have a take on who he thinks leads it, and I don't necessarily disagree. I love Zay Flowers. Not to spoil it, but that's a great pick from Mike. I think this offense in general, I want as many pieces as I can. And I don't mind getting the veteran guy who has apparently been the highlight player at camp. 40-yard touchdown this day, 70-yard touchdown the next. The most consistent and steady receiver, according to beat writers so far in camp. But there's been plenty of praise for Zay Flowers as well. He did have that touchdown, and I'm excited to hear what Mo has to say on him. But Odell Beckham, obviously, the track record speaks for himself.
the last time he was on the field. That's the big rub against him. It's been over a year since we've seen him.
Sure.
But every time he's missed time and come back, it still looks like close to the Odell we've seen before. With the Rams, he was scoring a touchdown and over almost one per game at that point. And in the Super Bowl, it looked like he was about to go for 200 yards and multiple touchdowns before he got hurt at that point. So Odell's just always a guy that he might be getting older, and yet he still just seems to always stay the same. The injury concerns are real with him, but I love this offense. I want as many pieces as I can get, and I'll take the veteran guy that's really making a name for himself at the cheapest price tag. He's going a little bit ahead of Bateman at this point, which is definitely deserved. Him versus Zay Flowers is a tricky debate, and I'm excited to hear what Mike has to say. Oh, he looks like he's back. Let me add him in, and we'll
Mike's
get to
back.
his.
I want to just also, I want to just add this comment that this guy.
I do. The Ohio State, they take out millions of dollars.
Got that McDonald's Wi-Fi.
You'd think Ohio State had the resources to be able to keep me on this live stream, but no, they can't give me the Wi-Fi to stay on. But hopefully the campus Wi-Fi picks up soon. But yeah, my guy, it's my first wide receiver sleeper is Gabe Davis.
Love it.
This is another guy I think might make you guys cringe, but his price is down five rounds from last year, so it's a different story to talk about. He's going at the end of the 9th round. He's the 45th wide receiver off the board, and I think that's just a tremendous value. He's more of your prototypical guy for a best ball team, but just because of the boom or bust potential. But I think he still provides value for redraft rosters. Last season, he finished as the wide receiver 36, and that was when just about everything that went wrong for Gabe Davis went wrong. That was, I think, the absolute worst season Gabe Davis could have had from a fantasy perspective, and he still finishes the 36. It was week 2 or 3, I want to say. He has a high ankle sprain, and we know how big of an effect those can have on those guys who really rely on their quickness and their explosiveness to make plays. That can really hamper guys who that's kind of their wheelhouse, the big plays. And so that clearly affected Davis down the stretch last year. He looked like he had kind of lost a step. And then he never really found that connection with Josh Allen that we saw at the end of the season before. I mean, everyone remembers that Chiefs game where he absolutely went off. It was either 3 or 4 touchdowns, I can't remember, but he still looked like the best receiver on the field that night. And we know what his ceiling is. So the ceiling is really why I'm interested, because he's being drafted below his floor, but we all know what he can do. Last season, he was 6th in the NFL in average depth of target. He was 12th in total deep targets, and he was top 20 in air yards and red zone targets. So he's getting all those high leverage looks. Last season, he just didn't convert them, but I just don't see how it gets worse than last season. So if you can get him at a lower cost than where he finished last season, and he has this ceiling to absolutely explode and be a reliable flex, I don't really want to say wide receiver 2, but I mean, you never really know. I mean, we saw what that guy did against Kansas City. So a guy who could end up scoring a bunch of touchdowns, catching a lot of deep balls, I don't really know why you wouldn't draft him where he's currently going, considering I just don't think it gets any worse.
And
I would.
I'm with you too. And one thing to add to that is the 7 games before the high ankle sprain, dating back to the year before, he was averaging 19.7 points per game ahead of that. So he was on a tear, absolutely. And now you get to buy him at his floor instead of buying him at his ceiling. And you got to mix in the fact too, not only did he get hurt, Josh Allen got hurt in a way that he couldn't sling it the way Josh Allen can sling it for that second half of the season. So even if Davis got himself kind of healthy by mid-year, it didn't matter because they weren't taking nearly as many aggressive deep shots. So I'm 110% with you there. I'm ready to buy the dip. I'm ready. I got hurt, but I'm one that's willing to forgive. And I think that will definitely, anybody that's willing to forgive Gabe Davis and go back to the well is going to be greatly rewarded for this cheaper price tag. I love that call. Absolutely.
It's funny who we're willing to forgive and who we're not, because for some reason I feel the same way. I've softened. I was irritated with him, but time healed the wounds for me, and now I'm ready to be in the Daddy Davis game again. Not so much Kyle Pitts, but yes. Anyway.
Come back into my life, Daddy. I missed you.
I did, especially at that price, like he said. Want to hit some honorable mention, guys?
Yeah. I just think most of the rookies outside of Addison and JSN, but like we mentioned earlier, the JSN injury, we don't really know what's going to happen with his price. But these are the rookies that are going primarily in this range, pick 100 to pick 150. But we know that rookies can end up being one of the biggest values in drafts just because people are scared to draft the unknown. We don't really know what we're going to get out of Flowers or Quentin Johnston. So they're going in the 10th-ish rounds because people are just kind of scared. They don't know what role they're going to play in this offense. But these are 2 first-round rookies. Their draft capital is really high. And in the case of Johnston, he's playing on what I think is going to be arguably the best offense in the NFL this year. So for him, the argument's pretty simple. I mean, he's in college at TCU. He showed he's a yards after catch monster, and now he gets to go play with Justin Herbert, who can sling the ball down the field. Johnston's he's definitely not bad with contested catches. I'd say it's one of his best strengths, and I just think that's a perfect fit for him, where he can go in, be a part of a dominant offense, and really break out in his first year. And then when it comes to Flowers, a lot of people are talking about changes coming to that offense as well, with the arrival of Todd Monken, allowing Lamar Jackson to control the offense more, sling the ball. So I think the ceiling is also really high with him just because of the offensive changes that we're going to see. And I don't think there's a clear wide receiver one in that room. Rashad Bateman hasn't been able to stay on the field. Odell Beckham's 31 these days. I know we just talked about him. I mean, you never know. He is Odell Beckham Jr. He could come back, but I think given his price, you might as well take a stab on Zay Flowers as well. He's also a first-round talent. He showed what he could do at Boston College, and I think he's worth a pick in this range.
Yeah, those late rookies often end up being, you think about St. Brown just a couple seasons ago, that might take over half the year for him to break out. But when they finally do, especially in Johnston's case, the fact that he's playing behind 2 potential injury-prone veterans in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, if he steps into a number 2, God forbid, a number 1 role within a Justin Herbert-led offense, he could go bananas, and Flowers from day one could be the guy there. And I'll talk about another rookie who's going a lot later than both of those guys. I saw Truth kind of queued it up for me already. He knew the segue was in transition. That's why the veteran over there, he recognizes it. I got to talk about Tank Dell as one of my favorite rookie sleepers and just overall wide receivers as well. In fact, he's my highest owned player in best ball as of today.
What?
That is going down
serious?
because I used to be getting him. Yes, it's crazy, but he was my round 18. Nobody was drafting him. So
who did he pass for that honor?
So it's between him, Romeo Doubs, and James Conner, actually, which is pretty strange and hideous. Daniel Jones also up there as well, and Antonio Gibson, who we've talked about a bit here. But yeah, so Tank Dell, one of my favorite last round sleepers that you can take in your fantasy leagues. As mentioned, one of my highest owned players as of right now, my highest owned. He was my round 18 stab in every best ball draft I did, and we're already the secret's a bit out at this point, and people are starting to catch up to the fact that Tank Dell could light up leagues, given that he's now going 2+ rounds higher in fantasy drafts. So I have not been taking him at that price, but I love him as a last round Hail Mary where you'll likely get him in your home leagues. The secret's out after a big 8-target, 5-catch, 65-yard, 1 TD first preseason game, goes up 2 rounds in underdog drafts. All the camp, though, if people have been reading about it, coaches were raving his work ethic, how absurdly open he is all the time, how many big plays he was making each and every day. D'Amico Ryans after the game saying, good to see Tank make plays. We've seen him make those plays every day. So good to see him also do it in the game. He's going to be an explosive playmaker for us. And they'll certainly need as many explosive playmakers as they can get. The Texans, 3,001 air yards. That's first in the league vacated. We talked about that opportunity with the Packers, even more so here with the Texans. Air yards here, 73% of their air yards are up for grabs, and a whopping 374 targets, first in the league, are also up for grabs here with the Texans. So no clear number 1 receiver. I think Tank Dell, he's not built necessarily like a number 1 receiver, but he can get deep, open deep. He can do it after the catch. We saw it all in the preseason games. He made deep explosive plays. He made people miss in the open field. And CJ Stroud banged the table for this kid, saying after their combine workout together, I want this kid. I love the way he runs his routes. I love the rapport we established together. And the team listened. They traded up. They made sure to go get Tank Dell. So I think between those two already having that narrative coming into the season, the fact that they had all the rookie camps to work together, it just seems like they're locked in on the same page. And I love Tank Dell as the potential wide receiver 1 here for the Texans.
I don't know what to make of the Texans, man. But before we go on to this next thing right here, can we talk Texans for just like 30 seconds real quick?
Yeah, and it actually transitions to Mike's next receiver too. So don't even worry about my honorable mention. I think Mike has him on the list for himself later too.
Considering what we agree, what the floor for the Texans is just absolutely abysmal, right? Also, I love that you're just drinking from like a bucket.
Oh yeah, Di Lorenzo said it's the 101 of water bottles.
I love the two hands, the double fist there. What do you think? What do you think is the ceiling for some of these Texans guys? Like Pierce, Collins. Like, do you think they could blow up? Is there any potential there?
I mean, for their price tags, yes. Given that they all go so cheap, given the fact that the Texans are going to suck, that often ends up playing into fantasy production just because they're going to be trying to chuck and keep pace with teams that are absolutely demolishing them early and often. So I think, yes, with so many yards up for grabs and the fact that they're going to be playing catch up nearly every single week, it doesn't necessarily kill teams when they're just bad real life wise. Oftentimes that's where some good fantasy production comes from. That's why everybody's so cheap here. Is it's a ugly on paper offense. It's a team that's probably not going to win a lot of games, but should somebody step up, and it's a big should, maybe it's Tank Dell, maybe it's the guy that Mike's about to talk about here too. If anyone does step up and claim like a true wide receiver one role, I don't care how bad their team is. 110 targets to 130 targets are 130 targets at the end of the day. And Stroud, I'm sure you'll talk about him too as an Ohio State guy over there, should be a market upgrade over Davis Mills, over anything we've had at the quarterback position in the Texans. Should be, is, we'll see. But I'll let Mike continue on with that because I know he's got a guy he wants to talk about too.
All right.
Yeah. Just the overall ceiling of this offense. I mean, I think that they're going to be playing from a game. The game script is definitely going to favor the pass catchers. They're going to be playing catch up a lot. But yeah, so the top guy in this offense, or at least what should be as is projected to be right now, is Nico Collins. He's another guy that the discrepancy between his price between redraft leagues and underdog is enormous. He was going around pick 115, I want to say, on underdog, but his composite ADP in redraft leagues, you can get him in the end of the 14th round, which is essentially free. I mean, I think that's an enormous value. He's the last wide receiver one that you can get in drafts. I mean, like in terms of the wide receiver one within their team. And I just don't see why you wouldn't take a team's top option this late in drafts. It's the very end of the draft, one of your last picks. I think it's solid. Just now diving into some of the statistics behind Collins. Last year, when he was on the field without Brandon Cooks, he was 25th, or he had a 25% target per route run rate, which was 12th among all wide receivers. If you take that on a full season, it was just a handful of games. But when Brandon Cooks wasn't on the field and he was the clear top option there, he was racking up targets and really being productive. And he played 9 full games last year. In 4 of those games, he saw 9 or more targets, which is kind of an insane number. I don't think he's going to do that. Maybe he hits it 4 times again next year. I don't think he's going to do that. But 9 targets is quite a large amount. And if he can keep up a similar pace to that, I think you talked about the 120 target mark. Like, yeah, he could easily get that. 120 targets is 120 targets. You can't really bat an eye at that, especially when you're getting him in the 14th round.
Ohio State just not paying
I got
the
that McDonald's Wi-Fi.
I know. But just to wrap up,
make a great point, though.
I mean, it is. Volume is volume, even in a shitty offense. And the coaches have talked about, one, that he's the team's leading target guy throughout camp, the go-to guy to move the chains, and how they also had him studying Julio Jones tape because that's the last time Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is what this offense is modeled after, Bobby Slowick coming over from the 49ers. So they've had him watching Julio Jones as like the last real big body guy to be in a Kyle Shanahan scheme. Of course, Nico Collins isn't prime Julio Jones, but just that idea of a role. Last time Julio Jones was with Kyle Shanahan, he had over 180 targets. Like maybe, just maybe, he gets 120, 130 within that scheme. Whoever it ends up being, wide open opportunity, fresh rookie quarterback that ideally will get better and better as the year goes. It could be Tank Dell. It could be Nico Collins. I think taking stabs at this Texans receiver room. Maybe it's, God forbid, it's Robert Woods, the old unsexy veteran that just continues to get it done whenever he gets used. Maybe it's him, but I think some stabs at the wide receiver room. The only one I'm not really into there is John Mechie. We've seen him now playing behind Noah Brown, even with Tank Dell out in the second preseason game. Mechie still couldn't catch the field. So I know he's the guy a lot of people are tabbing as the next big breakout for the Texans. I like Nico Collins. I like Tank Dell at their prices. I even like Robert Woods as a last round guy. I'm not really into Mechie. It seems like he's fallen out of the rotation at this point. So that's the Texans receiver I'm not going after. It looks like he's back too. Sorry, I see it again.
And his honorable mention guy is a guy that you've owned a fair amount of stock in your life. Although maybe maybe not this year.
Hold on. Everything's getting messed up.
Yeah. Ohio State's
right,
letting me down here. They're letting me down with this Wi-Fi today. I guess they're getting used to all the kids being back on campus. But the last quick point I wanted to make about Nico Collins is there's nowhere to go but up for this offense. Last year, they ranked 32nd in yards per play, dead last. CJ Stroud is an obvious step up from Davis Mills. And it can just a lot of this is really just based on the price. When you're getting the number one option on a team in the 15th round, I just don't really see how you say no. But yeah, this offense will improve. Nico Collins has a chance to see a good number of targets, so why not? But yeah, my honorable mention, DPJ, Browns wide receiver, another offense that I think is going to take a step up this season. There's no sugarcoating it. Deshaun Watson was abysmal last year. And I just really think that there haven't been many quarterbacks who played as well as Watson. I mean, he in years past had been an MVP candidate. People were making that discussion for him. And I don't think he's going to have that steep of a drop off at this age. So I think this offense as a whole is going to be better than it was last year. And I think it'll be a little bit more pass heavy. I mean, you've seen them make the additions with Elijah Moore. But my thought on DPJ is he's the deep target here. We saw him make some explosive plays last year. And I think he's going to be the guy that Watson's going to look for when he airs the ball out. And on an offense that I think is going to be not top 5 in the league, but I think they will be ahead of league average in terms of scoring by a decent margin. I think they're going to put up their fair share of points. I'm interested in investing in the deep option who could have a lot of scores. He might be a better best ball target just considering what his player archetype is. He's going to go for some deep touchdowns, and he might not give you consistent work week in and week out for your redraft leagues, but I think he's definitely someone you should consider.
All right, let's hit honorable mention and let's talk one of the Wolves' past, I guess, lost loves. I mean, wasn't this your guy in underdog or best ball last year for a while, Wolf?
Yeah. So Mike was just ripping up DPJ, and I thought they were all really good points. The only thing that's different, so I agree Watson could take that next step. And last year, my whole argument for him was the last time we had Watson on a full season, he was the number 1 rated deep passer in the NFL. Right. So it definitely, I can see that argument being well. I am worried now that Elijah Moore's there and apparently like the number 1 guy, and Amari Cooper's also there. Njoku had himself a mini breakout last year. I do worry the volume will be consistent enough for DPJ, but I do love the player. Obviously, last year, as you alluded to, Truth, he was one of my highest owned best ball guys, and he's one of the guys that actually came through. He ended up being in my lineup about 5-6 times, had a few real big spike weeks, and I think those will still be in place here as this offense plays at a faster pace and gets to another level. Should Watson take that step? That I still think is a big if and not something I'm betting a ton on in 2023 is Watson becoming Watson again. We will see if that burns me. But in terms of my last few sleepers, the guys getting undrafted that I think really should be mentioned. Obviously, hedging my Daniel Jones is breaking out and becoming the diet Josh Allen this season. Well, then you're going to want some pass catchers. And I do think Darren Waller is obviously the number 1 guy that you really want to get around 6-7 there. Hammer him, but also there's going to be some pass catchers that take that rise with the Daniel Jones ship. My most intriguing one is Jalin Hyatt, the rookie. I think he's going to be the one to get the slowest start. He's not in the starting lineup as of now, but he brings by far the most game-breaking elements to this offense, game-breaking speed. We saw it on that 33-yard touchdown the other night. All camp, you've been seeing the clips of him getting deep. So he's already mixing in with the ones. I think he's going to be one of those guys they bring in for some pretty good designs, and then by the end of the year could take over that starting spot, wherever that ends up being, as a really nice pick. So I like Jalin Hyatt as the most long tail upside, but any of these guys, Parris, Campbell, starting in the slot, that was a role Richie James wrote up to the wide receiver 12 value once he took over the starting role in week 10 and beyond. And then we also have Hodgins, who led the team in receiving touchdowns despite not playing there until week 11. So he could be a guy that has that great pre-established rapport. I love Darius Slayton, the guy that dominated training camp targets behind Only Darren Waller apparently took his game to the next level, talked to beat writers about how he really wants to prove he's a true number one receiver and deserving of the contract they gave him. It sounds like he's taken his game to another level, and I've always liked Darius Slayton, the player. So all of these guys, it might be tricky to know which week they blow up. I am worried it's going to be more of a spread the wealth attack outside of Darren Waller. But I think any of them are worth a stab as a last-round pick to see you get a piece of this rising offense and see really if one of them emerges as Daniel Jones's go-to wide receiver. I love taking stabs at it, especially Hyatt late with the upside.
All right, Mike, you like Alec Pierce, Mims, Jaden Reed?
Yeah, so my main guy here is Alec Pierce. He last year kind of took on this role in Indianapolis where he was their deep threat. And he's another guy, like I mentioned before, he's going a lot later in redraft than he is on Underdog. Underdog, I want to say around the 150 range, but you in most home leagues should be able to get him with one of your last picks, if not your last pick. I want to say he's going a good margin past pick.
180 or so, I think is what it's is ADP. So yeah,
I was seeing a little even later than that.
Yeah,
I was seeing a little later than that, but regardless, he's the deep threat guy here in Indianapolis, and that plays in really well to Anthony Richardson's strengths. Pierce has 4.3 speed. He led the team in average depth of target last year. His ADOT was 11.4. He set a team high 3 receptions longer than 40 yards. And with Anthony Richardson there and his ridiculous arm strength, it might be just me being a little hopeful, but I'm just envisioning some bombs going his way and Richardson airing the ball out to him. I mean, Richardson doesn't seem by any means to be a conservative player, at least from what he did in college and how he's been looking in early on here in the NFL. I think the Colts will be airing the ball out more than they did with Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz and Phillip Rivers, that string of very old quarterbacks. I think they'll be more inclined to push the ball downfield, and he's that guy. He'll be the guy running deep. And there's even been talks of him expanding his role in this offense and just becoming a more well-rounded receiver, not being just that deep target. But I think regardless, his role will at least remain the same of being that deep option for Anthony Richardson. And if he can connect on some big plays with Richardson and potentially even expand his role, I think he's a great pick in the last round of your draft.
Yeah, a lot of that hype. I just wanted to add about his expanded route tree and how much better he's looked on all routes, to the point that a lot of people are asking, could he be the number one here above even Michael Pittman because of how impressive he's been, how good his rapport looked with Anthony Richardson, and in particular the red zone as well was an area he's been dominating camp. So I'm a huge fan of Alec Pierce. I think this is a great call. And an offense that's modeled after the Eagles, strong run game, tons of deep shots. He fits this mold perfectly. So I'm a really big fan. I think it's a great call.
Yeah, and then just some quick comments on Marvin Mims and Jaden Reed. Marvin Mims, you've seen his price go up a little bit after they cut Hamler and lost Tim Patrick. I think Marvin Mims has a good chance to solidify himself as the guy who is the third option in 3 wide receiver sets. And if you think that there's a lot of things that have to go a little bit right for Mims to be productive from a fantasy standpoint. First, you have to believe in Russell Wilson coming back to where he was. You have to believe that Sean Payton's gonna be able to turn this offense around. But I think I'm someone who thinks that they will, in fact, take a step forward. Wilson will at least look closer to his former self than he did last year. I mean, last year was a disaster. But if Mims is on this offense that's going to be playing a lot of really good teams where they're going to have to throw the ball a lot to keep up, when they play Kansas City twice, they play the Chargers twice, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So if he can solidify himself in those 3 wide receiver sets, and maybe who knows, we see him play in front of Cortland Sutton, who knows, but I think he's a great look as well, especially with the role he has the chance to take on. And then Jaden Reed, the rookie out of Michigan State. Well, I know you talked about liking Doubs, and everyone assumes Christian Watson is going to assume the wide receiver 1 there in Green Bay, but he projects to be a solid slot option. And if you, once again, you got to kind of believe in Jordan Love as a passer. We don't really know what we're getting there, but as a slot option for Jordan Love, especially considering he's your last pick, he could end up paying off.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below. you.